On its surface, journaling is pretty straightforward. You get a notebook, you get a pen, you write about your life, done. But not all journaling is created equal. One of the most powerful journaling techniques is talking to yourself the right way. Let me explain. What does a person gain from practicing philosophy? Antisthenes, one of Socrates' students, had an interesting take. He said he gained the ability to hold a conversation with himself. Why would we want to talk to ourselves? Isn't that the domain of crazy people and eccentric cranks? Well, it turns out that talking to ourselves, particularly through a certain kind of journaling, can make us wiser, calmer, better able to navigate conflict, and generally just better people. This is exactly what philosophers are trying to do. The kind of journaling we're talking about is called Illeism, which basically just means that you're talking about yourself in a detached perspective in the second or third person. So I would write in my journal, Andrew ate dinner, or you ate dinner, which is my personal preference, instead of the normal, I ate dinner. That sounds like a really minor change. What is it really gonna do? But this shift creates enough distance between us and our egos to allow us to look at reality more objectively and to separate reality from the emotions that we have about reality. The clouds, which normally fog our thinking, start to dissipate when we look at our lives in this way. This technique is not new. Some of the wisest men and women in history have used it to gain perspective on their lives. Perhaps the best example of this is Meditations, the journal of the Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius. If you read the book, you'll notice that he uses the second person pronoun you and yours most frequently. He only rarely says I. It's not the thing itself that troubles you, he says, but your judgments about them. And this you have the power to eliminate. And the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. The soul takes on the color of its thoughts. And on another occasion, just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Modern researchers have found that Marcus's way of journaling really does change how we think. In this study of the distance self-reflection diary method, researchers asked 555 participants to reflect on their daily struggles in a month-long diary. Half were told to use the third person, the other half wrote in the first person. The researchers found that all measures of wise reasoning, such as intellectual humility, open-mindedness about how situations can unfold, and consideration for diverse viewpoints were improved in the third person group. Utilizing the ancient practice of distance self-reflection, we demonstrate that referring to oneself in the third person during repeated reflections on daily events affords a more expansive self-focus, which in turn facilitates wiser reasoning, the researchers wrote. Several dozen other studies have more or less found similar improvements. So simply writing about your life and stressful events in the second and third person is likely to make you psychologically healthier. But there is a way that you can take this a step further. We might ask ourselves, why did Marcus journal in the second person to begin with? Yes, it was a standing philosophical tradition. But in How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, which I'll put a link to in the description, the philosopher and therapist Donald Robertson says that meditations may have started as an attempt by Marcus to replace the counsel of his philosophy teacher Junicus Rusticus, who'd recently died. Well into adulthood, Marcus relied on Rusticus's advice. Marcus would tell Rusticus what he was struggling with, and his old master would give him perspective that was grounded in philosophy. Later in life, when Rusticus died, Marcus had to become his own teacher. He already knew the precepts of Stoic philosophy, and he basically began externalizing them and feeding them back to himself as if he was an outside teacher. If you study a religion or a philosophy, or you just have someone you look up to or admire or want to be like, then you can do this same thing. If you know this person, you know their perspective to some extent, and you can give yourself the feedback that they would give you. So anytime something is troubling you, or just on a random day, ask yourself, what would this person, this saint, this philosopher, this wiser person, or just this better version of yourself, what would they tell you? You already know, so just pass the information back to your conscious mind. Whether or not you recruit this mental mentor, just journaling in the second or third person can make a big difference in your life, so do that if nothing else. It's also really helpful to journal about fate and death, which I talk about in these videos, so you might want to check those out. Until next time, keep journaling.